We don't think race has any place in all of this, and we believe that certainly the state charged the case correctly when they made it criminal profiling.
Mr. Park, sorry. Go ahead.
I want to make sure we're clear, so we're very consistent. I honestly think nobody can be intellectually dishonest and not acknowledge the racial undertones of this case. So everybody gets it, as we said. That's why everybody's watching this case, to see if everybody in America could get equal justice.
Absolutely, and that's why my attention was drawn to Mr. O'Mara referring to that racial profiling by referencing prior crimes by black males. I have to ask you this. What was your reaction, Mr. Crump, when Defense Attorney Mark O'Mara decided to pause for 4 minutes, sit down, there was dead air in the court, and he invited the jury to imagine what might have happened in that period?
I thought as a lawyer that was not a good strategy, because he tried to say in those 4 minutes, if Trayvon Martin really wanted to get home, he could have got home. And he talked about that long amount of time that he had to get home. Well, the problem with the argument is, if you take George Zimmerman at his word, he said that he was going back to his car. And the question you have to ask is, why didn't George Zimmerman get in his car? Was he looking for an address for 4 minutes, or was he stalking Trayvon, who, when you think about it, Trayvon, like I guess anybody else with common sense, if you know you're being followed by a strange, creepy man, you don't take him to your home. And as Rachel Gentile said, Trayvon had went to hide. And that seems very logical versus George Zimmerman's reason of why he didn't get to that car in 4 minutes.
Right. Mr. Parks, are you satisfied with the way the prosecution has marshalled the arguments? Because Mr. Crump, in something like 38 seconds, has just produced a sterling presentation of why the claim of those 4 minutes can be quite easily debunked, and yet many critics, many people looking at these proceedings have felt that the prosecution has not really stitched the argument, the narrative, as effectively as they might have done.
Well, I think at this point we've clearly seen that Bernie DeLaRionda did an incredible job of taking all of the evidence in this case, whether it's the inconsistencies, whether it was the whole theory of the case that
Mr. Parks, Mr. Parks, why didn't Mr. DeLaRionda make more of the inconsistencies with regard to the position of the weapon that Mr. Zimmerman had on him? We know for a fact that Mr. Zimmerman has given multiple different descriptions as to where exactly that weapon was. Why wasn't that a major flank in the prosecution?
Well, I think maybe you missed it, but he did talk about it.
I did not miss it, sir. He did talk about it, but it was not as...
He did talk about it.
He did, sir. Yes, go ahead.
But I think, too, in the closing argument, they took the conversation as to where it really needed to be. The bigger conversation as to right and wrong and who bared the responsibility for the situation. That's how you try a full-bodied case. Although you mentioned the various aspects of the case and how you argue is strategical. And different people argue different ways. But they argued it, I believe, and the family believes, in a way that was very, very, very to the point, very strong, and really presented the case well. But I really enjoyed, too, how they humanized Trayvon and made his life significant. In several opportunities, they challenged that jury. They challenged that jury and really got very in-depth with them in terms of how they should view this case in its entirety.
And Mr. Crump, it wasn't just Trayvon that they humanized, because they also humanized Mr. Zimmerman with the prosecution assistant attorney saying, if ever there was a window into a man's soul, it was those words from the defendant's mouth. There are only two people who really know what happened. One can't testify, and the other is a liar.
Well, I think it was very effective. John Guy's closing summation, and as I said before, he really got to the heart of the matter on so many points, talking about what not only was in every individual's heart, the defendant and the victim, but also when he talked about the fact that Trayvon was shot in his heart, and the human heart can do many things, you know, and I thought that was really effective. And so I'm just faithful, like our clients. We have a lot of faith that as long as the jury based their verdict on the evidence, he will be held accountable. And I think Mr. Guy challenged them, as Attorney Parks said, to really look at critical, significant points, because that's what it really comes down to. We can all argue about, you know, technicalities and stuff, but it really comes down to is this bigger picture of the neighborhood watch volunteer got out of his car with a 9mm gun from profiling and following a teenage kid who did nothing wrong, had every legal right to be there, and then minutes later he's shot in the heart. Isn't that every parent's worst nightmare? When you really think about it, that your child walking home can be profiled and killed and nobody be held accountable for it.
Mr. Benjamin Crump and Mr. Darrell Parks, attorneys for Trayvon Martin's family, thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Stay with us. The jury is now in deliberations in the trial of George Zimmerman. We'll go back live to Sanford, Florida in just a moment.